We have finished the parshas focusing on Abram and Sarah's great deeds. We take a deep dive into Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Rivka. Next week we'll meet Rachel, Leah. One thing we need to realize when studying the Avos and Yemos is that we're studying ourselves. How is that? Did you ever wonder, where does the Jewish people get its strength? We have suffered so much and we still love HaKadosh Baruch Hu and accept suffering, saying, Kol man da'avad HaKadosh Baruch Hu l'tava of it. Everything Hashem does is for the good. What makes them secular Jews in Odessa in the 1800s get the itch that the only proper place for Klal Yisrael is Eretz Yisrael? And especially, what gave us the wherewithal through all the Doris to give up our lives and the lives of our children and grandchildren for the oneness of God? Listen to these two Mishnayos that both mention Avram and note the difference between them. Asara Doris mi Adam va'ad Noach. There are 10 generations from Adam va'ad Noach. Asara Doris mi Noach ad va'ad Avram. There are 10 generations from Noach until Avram. The very next Mishnah says, maybe a more famous Mishnah, Asara Nisyonos. 10 challenges, 10 great difficulties. Nisnas Avram Avinu alav hashalom v'amad b'kulam. In Mishnah Beis, Avram is listed as Avram. In Mishnah Gimel, one Mishnah later, it says Avram Avinu. Why is he first jumps out? What we call a Shelatam. Even from a simple reading of the Mishnah, you have to ask that question. Why here is Avram listed as Avram, and here is listed as Avram Avinu, Avram our father? Says the Ruach Chaim, or Chaim Belozhner. Quotes a passing Mishnah. Mishalich betumo tzadik ashri banav achrov. The tzaddik goes in his tumo, in his righteousness, in his straightness, in his completion. His children are lucky that come after him. There are certain midos that a tzaddik works hard to get them, to acquire them, to attain them. You look at the children already, it's a second nature. And work with a little bit of work. The mother had to work extremely hard to touch a certain milah, to accomplish something, to get over a certain bad midah, and the children, it's very much to them. Simple Jews are most in nefesh at Kiddush Hashem. And that's from our father Avram. The Nisyonos that Avram went through weren't historical one-time events. They were there to establish our nature. Suddenly a person gets in his head, I have to go to Eretz Yisrael against all odds. Situation is so great in New York, who would ever want to leave? Hu min Yisayin? That's a joke. Okay, Lech Lecha. Not a laughing man there. Okay, Hu min Yisayin Lech Lecha. That's when the Yisayin of Lech Lecha. The Kabbalah is called Avnei Mishmaya Dotav, and accepting everything as Jews do, min Yisayin Hara'av. That was from the Yisayin of the Ra'av, Shel Hir Achar Midos of Hashem Yisborach. So it says, such a beautiful pshat, so it rings so true. In the first Mishnah, we're talking about Avram, the historical person. There were 10 generations from Adam until Noach. And there were 10 generations from someone named Noach, someone named Avram. He wasn't Avram Avinu in that, he was a person in history. But in the Nisyonos, he's Avram Avinu. You want to know who you are? Look at the Avos. Take in their strength week to week and know that this is the story of you. They bequeath to us a different nature. Every Jew can touch eternity because of them. If you feel you're special, it's because you are. If you meet someone with great yichus, personal lineage or pedigree, you can sometimes sense this healthy pride about them. I'm an Enikel, the Rebbe Melech. Sam Sofer is known to have many, many, many descendants. We go back to the Gra, my grandfather, the Talmud of Cook. But we're all miyuchasim. We're all like that. Those of us with Jewish parents, and those who made the amazing choice to become sons and daughters of Avram. We all have to have that healthy pride inside of us. Look who my daddy was. These are my grandparents. And their spiritual legacy is my spiritual reality. Their DNA is my DNA. I've shared that idea many times. But today I want to focus and give some guidance on how to stand in Nisyonos. We see we have the power from them to stand in Nisyonos, but how do we do it? We're spending some time thinking about it. What's a Nisayon? I'd loosely define that as a significant challenge. It could be a one-time, very difficult thing, or often it's something ongoing, but it's serious. There are minor difficulties we have. I have a little bit of a headache. Nisayon. Be a man, get up. But they're Nisyonos. And we all have Nisyonos. We all have serious challenges. Even especially the greatest amongst us. Rabbi Yerucham Lubavitz, the famous Mashgiach, the Mir Yeshiva, said, Shum gadol lo nafal min hashamayim. No gadol fame came out of Shamayim like that. Everybody knows Rav Hutner's famous letter. Or maybe you don't. You should. There are all types of Nisyonos. Emotional, physical, spiritual. Not having something that's very important to you. Real situational difficulties. Emotional. A person can have emotional Nisyonos. Generally, they're very sad. That's a Nisayon. Angry, resentful, jealous. Being in a compromised position like working for your younger brother. Having no cheshik. People wake up sometimes for a long time, they have no desire to do anything with themselves. Being held back by the concern of what people think about me. That's a big Nisayon. I worry so much about people think about me, I can't go forward. Physical. Many people have physical limitations that are of significant nature. Spiritual. Sometimes you have emunah related. You want to believe, but Kedusha. Many people have challenges in areas of Kedusha. Lashon Hara. Not having something. A shidduch. Children. Shalom bayis. Some people it's getting a date. Children that aren't doing well, of course. Terrible Nisayon in our generation. So I want to share a bunch of ideas to think about how Nisyonos can help us in real time. That's the idea today. And if you don't relate to one idea, hopefully you can still relate to another. That's why shooting a bunch of arrows and different neshamas are different. Different ideas I know have touched me differently. But I want to share a bunch of things that hopefully everybody can find one or two ideas which will be meaningful to them and meaningful to them in real time. That's what we're looking for today. First thing we have to delineate, of course, and I should share that much of the Shmuze comes from the work of Rabbi Schoonmaker, my favorite tzaddik, that, we have to have emunah bitachon. We have to believe in the Rebbeinu Shalom. I'll read a little bit from what he writes recently. Shekol pirtei pratim, shekol matzav zman. All the minor details of every situation. It's all from Hashem. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu's Mevi is well-known, Ach v'rak Nisyonos sheyecholim lamod b'hem. Everybody knows that one, right? Kadosh Baruch Hu's bringing something you can stand in. V'akol is the best of mamish, which is the best, not good. Kadosh Baruch has a whole grand things that He wants to give us. And through standing in Nisayon, you're unleashing, as we'll talk more about, a spiritual power to get those things. In a word, Hashem put me exactly here. He loves me. He knows I can handle this. And that should help. That should create in us a sense of, I can do this. If we know that. Now to appreciate this, I think there's a very important introduction that we need. Which is that comfort does not equal better. If we equate comfort with goodness, we can never understand how this uncomfortable situation could be good. And how could a good, loving God be doing this? Because it's not comfortable. And Nisyonos, minei obey, by their very nature, are not comfortable. Otherwise, it wouldn't be any sign. Now, this is so important and difficult. Because our world is working at a dizzying pace to make things more and more comfortable. It's technically working in that direction, and unfortunately it's also philosophically working in that direction. If we can use the word philosophical about such a silly thing. We can't have a phone which requires 4 swipes. Do you guys even know what the word boot up means anymore? It used to be you had to boot up a computer because it booted up. I don't know boots on computers today. Huh? Only 3 cameras with 14 features? What is this, a dinosaur age, this phone? And philosophically, all this foolishness about microaggressions, Helicopter parenting, which we don't give enough of credit to how stupid that is. Where people helicopter over their child to make sure they avoid any difficulty the kid will ever have. It's a concept. You have 1.2 children, then you're a helicopter. Have more children, then get rid of the helicopter. You raise normal kids. This deeply legitimizes this false notion that comfort is goodness, because we're trying to create a situation of just comfort. So then it's very hard to look at Nisyonos as coming from a loving God who's setting it up for me for my best. On a different note, in the same idea, before we get to our next idea, a great practice which will help us face our Nisyonos with Emunah Bitachon is to generally look and see when you have Hashgacha in your life. It'd be great to even have a notebook full of such things. Where have you felt a little Hashgacha? Maybe I'll tell a personal story, not such a big story. I wasn't going to tell it, but last Friday, I shop on Friday for the Shabbos. Not last Friday, 2 Fridays ago. And maybe it's a silly story, but I'll tell you, I was moved by it. So I walk out of one store, I look at my list, I forgot to get kishka. That's much more nogay to me than it is to my wife, you understand. This is already a big tzara. This is Nisyonos. And I'm thinking, when on my travels, you have to go to a bunch of stuff. There on the Paran Strip, I go to this place, this. And I went to the place to get salads, Hadar Gula, for those who know. Good salads over there. Fine. And I take the salads, and I kind of I didn't cut off anybody. I wouldn't do that. But I shifted in front of another fine gentleman, who was 30 years younger than me, and I put my salads down. Okay? And not in an angry way. And then he, on the same counter, puts his kishka down. And I said, my goodness, and I never realized, it makes sense, but I didn't realize that there in Hadar Gula, you got kishka, so I didn't have to go to another store. So I felt the hand of God. That's good. That's good. And you get moved by that, and you get touched by that. Everybody should have a whole notebook of things like that, because the more that's part of your reality and your outlook, and you feel the goodness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu when it's there in front of you, with you, the more you'll feel about things that are difficult. Rav Shach had a very difficult life, personal life, in many ways, in troubles, many family troubles. It happens to be well known. I spoke about it a little bit on Shabbos. I don't have time to go into it, but he had many. And he was sitting with a bacher one time, talking. I heard the story from my Rebbe. You heard from the person it happened to, a very direct story. And he got up. He just suddenly stood. Ribono Shel Olam, he said in Yiddish, all the years, you've been so good to me. You've been so sweet to me. And he meant it. Because he looked at all the goodness and the sweetness in his life, and I'm sure that helped him with the difficulties in his life. So that's Emunah Bitachon. For sure that's going to help us very much. The more we have that, the more that's going to help us stand in Nisyonos. Okay, the next idea. 3 words. Gam ze yavor. This will also pass. You see this so often. You have a terrible pain. It eventually stops. The shidduch does come. The annoying neighbor moves away. You finally get the appointment. I have a strong belief, but it's a little bit personal kind of, that there's a certain amount of suffering people need to go through. And then you suddenly find that shliach and it stops at a certain point. You see this very often. Haven't you seen that? Suddenly a new medicine worked. You saw a different therapist. You ran into someone else who could help you. You read an article that had the answer you need. You started taking a multivitamin. What changed? Listen to Pasuk in the Yud. Kate Sam Lachoshech, a likely place. Kate Sam Lachoshech, he sets a limit to darkness. The Medrash says, Vayimi Kate Shnatayim Yamim, by Yosef, Kate Sam Lachoshech, Zman Nasan L'Olam, Kama Shalim Yaseh Ba'Feila. Kadosh Baruch Hu placed a limit. How long will there be difficulty in the world? My time, Kate Sam Lachoshech, Kishkol Zman Sheyitzah Har B'Olam, Ofil, V'Tzal Mavis B'Olam. When the Yitzhar Hara is here with us, there's terrible things in the world. Nekar Yitzhahar min olam ain't no v'tzam avos bolam. But the Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to come and pitam yavav heichalo melchatem avakshim. Suddenly it's going to happen, and it's going to be there, and the Gula will be here, and we'll be happy. Davar acher, Keitzam lechoshech zman nasan liyosef. Kadosh Baruch Hu gave Yosef time. Kam shanim yaseh ba'fela beis asurim. Came shegiya kates chalom paruch halom. Yosef suffered, and he had to suffer. There was a time. But Kadosh Baruch Hu put an end to it. We see from this medrash there's an end to the trials and tribulations of this world, and we see in a more pointed way there's an end to individual sufferings. Yosef had to do his time. But that time is ended, and the Kadosh Baruch Hu brings his salvation right away. Paro makes a dream. And how exact is this timing? Listen to another medrash. Ketzam l'choshech, shem malchus nogas b'chaver ta'afil k'mlo nima. One kingdom doesn't touch the other kingdom's time a hair's breadth. Listen how exact it is. Elam malchus shigiyah zman alipol b'yom nofels b'yom. If Rosh is supposed to fall during the day, it's going to fall during the day. Umalchus shigiyah zman alipol b'layla, it's supposed to fall b'layla, nofels b'layla. It's that exact. Kadosh Baruch Hu hasn't worked out. Oh, Russia, after 70 years, of course, it went decrepit. Ketzam l'choshech, we saw it in our lives. A Malchus of Rishus, Lenin, Stalin, Trotsky, the whole sordid bunch, the motley crew. Ketzam l'choshech, and suddenly Russia's gone. In that way. V'chein kishetabo Malchus Yisrael. Miyad yibalu kol Malchus shilfanah. It's that exact. Incredible. So those two expressions can give a lot of chizuk when we face Nisyonos. Gamze Yavor and Ketzam l'choshech. You can translate into French, English, Swahilian. That works better for you. Maybe you're saying, Rabbi, some trials don't come to an end. And that's for sure a fair question. There are people who never X, Y, Z. Definitely. With a bit of trepidation, I want to share powerful, incredible words from Mr. Meyer. It's out of my pay grade to write things like this, but I think it's worth sharing. Calling Nisyonos over him. All challenges past. But the eternality of what's gained by standing in Nisayan, this Gabras based Nisayan, those who stand, Zenishan Nitzchias, Mamishal Doris Doris. That stands forever. The Nisayan passes, but the reward stands forever. The accomplishment is never gone. Every person can see himself. And the Gullus we're now. Anybody who was alive 120 years ago is not alive today. That's better than what economists tell you. Kol ribay milyonim neshamish nodu lifnei 110 shana nimtzu kvar bo million. They're already somewhere else. The elu shezachu lama b'nisyonoseim nenem yiziva shchina v'koach hamid b'nisyonos. They're now standing and shining in the light because of this nisyonos they stood in. V'rom sham shekol nisyonos. It could have been in all their lives, but they only b'chinas arai shebarai. From where that neshama is sitting today, he looks back and he says, "Okay, it was 60 or 70 years, but it's done, and I came through on top, and look what I'm enjoying now because of it." And the enormous schar they get for standing in Nisyonos. So it was over. Va'af hagdol Nisyonos hagdol b'yoser. Since they live with the Chaim Yoser, Auschwitz passes, Siberia passes. He's a serious person. Even the ones we're going to have today are going to pass. Kol Nisyonos Kum Avru. Even if it's Shas Ma'aseh, they were terrible. But what's left from them? What's left is the eternal reward. So it's an incredible, incredible idea. I never thought of it that way. But on the one hand, Gamze Yavor, many things in this world pass, and everybody can look in his life and see difficulties that they got past. Gamze Yavor. But even if in this world it doesn't, in the next world it does. And if someone could stand with that, will be Zocha to Or Nitzchi, because of Nimidi Nisoyim. Incredible. Okay, let's share another idea. Malacha Hayam Kisanus. What did the Yam see to make such an incredible mace? Malach Hayam. That's the question. Malach Hayam. What did you see there? What did you see, Yam? How did you split in front of Klal Yisrael? Marisa, Maya. So the Medrash says it saw Arono Shel Yosef, the Yosef's body, Yosef's Aron. The basic explanation, which many say of that, is what cloth did Yosef have to split the sea? Joseph splits the sea. Why? Is that Yosef was an incredible Omer b'Nisayin. He stood through his challenges. He stood in the Nisayin Gadol, the wife of Potiphar. And equally to me, always is moving. I think sometimes again doesn't get as much credit. It's not greater. He stood in Nisayin and not having a deep and lasting hatred to his brothers who treated him so terribly. He was the Bechir Hashem. And imagine how one brother, 10 brothers against you, your older brothers. Terrible. What incredible Nisyonos. He was touching something beyond Teva, beyond the natural order. He was acting miraculously. And when you act miraculously, you're zocha to miracles. In front of Yosef, the sea splits. guess what? It isn't just Yosef, it's little me and you too. If we stand in our Nisyonos, we're a tremendous Eis Ratzon, a defining, inspired time. You create that. And creativity, certain words, it's like cool. Somebody said to me cool about something, How come cool lived on and groovy is in the dumps? I don't know. It's cool. It goes on and on and on, Vibe is like, will vibe be here as long as it's cool? I don't know. But creativity is a great word, right? It's one of those beautiful words. We all long to be creative, and we all appreciate the truly creative amongst us. But each of us can be creative. Think about it. And not just create something like a piece of art which doesn't have apparent inherent value. You can create an Eis Ratzon. And the continuation of that idea is that when you stand B'Nisayin and you create this Eis Ratzon, it's a time to daven. Just like one davens during a Seres Yemei Tshuva because it's an Eis Ratzon, it's an inspired time. HaKadosh Baruch Hu appreciates the difficulty that you went through, the emotional, the physical, the spiritual. And of course, I'm speaking to myself. We're only working together. Not all one that came out of the maze in this topic. Mamish working together today. So you daven during that time. And I want to emphasize, even if you fail other times, and let's think about this. This is a very dramatic topic. It's very dramatic, right? When we think about Avram Avinu and Yosef, the picture we get is that they stood in every Nisayin. I mean, the lashon of the Mishnah by Avram is Asar Nisyonos Nisas Avram Avinu Olav Hashem Va'amad Bekulam, and he stood in all of them. L'dia Kama Chibaso Shel Avram Avinu, and the Tashbat says L'dia Kama Chibaso Shel Avram Avinu Shelo Hay Mahar Klal. He never questions, and that's why it was called an Oev, Avram Oavi, Matzu Es Levo Neman Lefanecho, because he never questions, and that's why it was Av Hamon Goyim. Everyone recognized in the whole world, non-Jewish and non-Jewish, how great Avram was. But for most of it, it's not realistic. We aren't Avram, just like we aren't Rav Shach, the Baal Shem Tov, the Gra Rav Yosef. But every Nisayon we do stand in is amazing. This is not an all or nothing sugya. Take that in. And the only one who wants you to think it's an all or nothing sugya is the Yetzer Hara, v'chayalosov. Because if you think it's all or nothing, and you will fall, so now it's nothing. So don't fall to that trap. I'm going to share two more ideas about standing in Nisayin, then we'll be done. We need to know that this is what Klal Yisrael does. I am not alone. You are not alone. We are not alone. Rather, I'm part of an amazing chain of generation. And this is one of their defining factors. For thousands of years, Klal Yisrael has been Am Mekadesh Shemecha, the nation which is Mekadesh Hashem. We said the Shana and Shana Rabbin, Rav Herschel shared it with us in the Sukkah, Om Ani Choma. Om means like Uma, Ani Choma. Klal Yisrael is the nation of Ani Choma. We're a wall, a Chinese wall. And it wasn't just Avram and Yosef, it was our grandfathers and grandmothers who chose death over life to sanctify God's great name. And it was our brothers and sisters more recently in the hellholes of the tunnels of Gaza that stood up. And you know the stories, and you have to hear the stories because they're today, and they're at Kanei, and they were Jews, and they weren't the best Bakrim and the Panovich and Gush. And look what they did. Look what they stood for. Look how they stood strongly. Incredible. And this has been our lot from the beginning. Amikad Shemecha. And we teach our children about it from a young age. It's incredible, and you have to teach. Don't skip over that story and make it real. Avram was thrown into a furnace, and he didn't know he was going to come out because he believed in something. That's your heritage. That has to be a child's Girsa D'Yankasa. Make it real for them. You have to scare them, but you have to tell them what it is. We're not fair-weathered friends of the Ribbono Shel Olam. We stand with him, and we've stood with him, and we'll stand with him through thick and thin. And we should know about those Nisyonos. But you have to realize Nisyonos, we don't have time to go into, maybe another time, are very real. Nisyonos of this generation are very real. Someone pointed out it's like, then there was, in a certain way, it was Chitzoni, now it's Pnimi. And anybody who opens up their hearts and eyes realizes the Nisyonos of this generation. And we can take a lot of chizuk in realizing that this is what Klal Yisrael did. I'm part of that. Okay, our final idea I want to share is related to a point we did already, and I dafka chose this for last week. It's a nice point. Maral points out the words nisayon and nes are similar. Nisayon, nisayon, and nes, miracle. When a person stands b'nisyonos, he can be zocha to nisim. He can be zocha to wondrous things. And it makes sense. Like we said from Arona Shal Yosef. We all have different things we need in our lives. In the 1910s or 20s, two individuals went to, I believe it was Rabbi Schoonmaker, who was a little bit unknown today, unfortunately. It was Mamish the Gadol Ador, the Gadol Psak, one of the most important Achronim. My Rabbi Blockman told me one time a whole Reb Chaim is one line in Rabbi Schoonmaker. So I think it was him. But two Yidden came to him and they wanted to go to the Treif in Medina. What was the Treif in Medina? America, right? People were very nervous. So Hashem said a terrible letter about going to America. Don't go. And they wanted to talk to the Gadol Ador. Can we go? First Yid came to him and said, explained the situation, says, go. Second Yid came to him and said, don't go. He said, how come to Reuven you told to go? And he said not to go. He said, I heard Reuven out. And he needs Yeshua. He needs a salvation. And you see on Sukkot, when you say Ana Shem Moshiach, now you shake the lulav. When you need Hatzlacha, you don't shake the lulav. A Yeshua needs to move. He needed a salvation. He has to go to America. Your situation is more tolerable. You need Hatzlacha. You're not having Hatzlacha. Stay in Europe. Ana Shem Moshiach, Ana Shem Hatzlicha. We all have in our lives Ana Shem Moshiach situations, every one of us, and we all have in our lives Ana Shem Hatzlicha situations. And of course you have to down for both. But Ritzi Meyer advises to write down and be cognizant of the nisim you need. Some of us need nisim. We need miraculous things. And realize that when you're standing in Nisayon, again, and I share this as, not as a philosophy and a nice Torah, as something to keep in mind when the difficulties happen, is that you're unleashing great spiritual powers to affect those things. Your standing in Nisayon could be the way to get that miracle. Now, it's obviously out of my pay grade to give promises. But to say you're unleashing great spiritual power, I think anybody who believes in God and Torah can understand that. And it makes sense. We daven al tiviyeni l'dei nisayon. Don't bring us to Nisyonos, God. But, of course, we will have them, and Ezrat Hashem, by thinking about some of what we shared today, it'll make it that much easier to be successful. Hatzlacha to me and to all of us.